city would get a credit equal to the amount that they cleaned and use it for their garbage trucks. Los Angeles, they actually took this idea from Toronto. It's one of the great things about cities. They've got all these interesting ideas. They talk to each other. The ideas spread very quickly. So we did a pilot project because we're very prudent and we're Canadians. We wanted to make sure it worked. Los Angeles heard we were doing a pilot project and just completely did all of their street lights. So we were testing to see if you could retrofit street lights with LED lights to see if you had enough light and so forth. They've done them all. Quick payback, lots of savings. And I wanted to mention Los Angeles because my image of Los Angeles, at least, is it isn't a very environmentally friendly place because it's all about the car. And, you know, there's very limited public transit there, but they're trying very much as well. Calgary, you know, the heart of the oil patch. By the end of this year, all of the power used to run the city as an institution, not people's houses, but everything the city does, like its LRTs, all of that will be from wind. And they're in the middle of the oil patch. And that's due to the former mayor, David Brown-Connier, who I don't think gets enough credit. He was a real leader amongst Canadian mayors. Copenhagen. Copenhagen shows very much how to bring this idea of how we're building a future economy together with our environmental issues. And it's sort of a Danish thing. In the 1970s, when there was the first oil shock, OPEC said, you know, we want to charge more for our oil. And there were significant problems around the world. Denmark said, we don't want to be dependent on foreign oil. So we're going to use our own sources of energy to generate electricity from a national security perspective. So they picked coal. That's sort of whoops, unfortunately, because coal has terrible pollution, both locally and greenhouse gases. But it shows how they decide. And when they realized how bad coal was, they said, we've got to find another way to generate electricity. And they are the home of some of the most significant wind energy companies today. And they've made the same decision that they did when they said we have to get off Middle Eastern oil. We have to get off coal, and we will, and they're doing it. And in Copenhagen, they have these fabulous wind farms out in the harbor. They're quite beautiful in that photograph. They're very warmly received. Some of them are private, some are public. But not only is it about energy, they have a whole industrial strategy based around the fact that they are the world's leading manufacturer of this equipment. So it's become at the heart of their economy. In fact, the city of Copenhagen doesn't have an environmental strategy and an economic development strategy. They have one. And it's how do we develop the economy through things that are good for the environment. When we were there in December 2009, I took a ship out to look at the wind farms. And I do have some advice. Even if you're Canadian, if you're on a ship in a harbor in Copenhagen in December, wear a coat. I have never been so cold. It was freezing. But the guide was from the co-op that owns some of these, and he said people were very proud of them. And you get phone calls from people, Lars or whatever, saying, you know, I'm looking at turbine 13, it's not turning as fast as turbine 12, and you greased the ball bearings this week. So it interested me, it's not only has the government got the right strategy there, the people get it. And I actually think that's true in Toronto and most cities. People understand these issues, but they do want some leadership to make sure that together we can do the right thing. So here's Toronto's strategies. I'll talk a little bit more about these and then give two examples of very important things that I think show how you can build a city the right way and bring together these important goals of environmental sustainability and economic sustainability. So our Climate Change Action Plan, which passed unanimously actually by City Council in 2007, very important strategy. It said we're going to meet Kyoto targets. In fact, we're going to better them and reduce our greenhouse gases that way, and had a whole range of measures that set out how we would do it. And it also approved the concept behind Transit City, which I'll speak about in a little bit. Green Economic Development Strategy came out of the climate change strategy. We said we need an economic development strategy that is green and that will build on the Climate Change Action Plan. And then the Sustainable Energy Strategy I spoke about before, but the key thing to remember from that is that if you have a distributed energy, so if you're generating electricity from lots of small power plants, If those power plants are renewable, and in our context, ground source heat pumps, which are also called geothermal, you drill a hole into the ground and take the heat out in the winter or the cold out in the summer, because once you get deep enough, the temperature remains the same, are economic today. You can do those on a neighborhood basis as well. And I'm learning in my private sector life now that there's all sorts of technologies available now that are green and that can generate electricity and heat and cool buildings and tap into a grid. So that's the idea behind the power of to live green, is that we have lots of these small power plants in buildings or on buildings around the city, and the grid in our case needs to be modernized because it's very old. Once you modernize it, it's called a smart grid. It allows you to do that, and that can work in any city around the world. So this is just some highlights of what was being done. I know this slide's sort of busy, but you can see we're addressing all these things. So energy retrofits in buildings, public transit, a project called Tower Renewal I'll speak about in a moment, some energy generation like a wind turbine. We have a green building standard, and this was very interesting. When we started talking about this, developers came to us and said, we don't want you to do a green building standard because we're worried it'll cost too much and there won't be any development in Toronto. And as you can see, that didn't happen. There's lots of development. But we said to them, we'll make it voluntary at first if you work with us. And we worked with them, made it voluntary, and then made it mandatory. And in that process, which took about 3 years, the developers went from saying no to building buildings that were greener than our standard, because they realized that not only was it the right thing to do, but that people wanted to live in a green building and would pay more to do it. So they ended up making more money by building green. And that's very true in Toronto, not as true in the suburbs around Toronto yet, but very, very true in Toronto. Live Green Toronto up on the right there is a little program, but a very important one. Because people were saying to me all the time, and to their counselors, we want to do the right thing, but we don't know how. Can you help us? So what we did with Live Green was we created very small grants, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, and hired some people we call community animators to go out in the community and work with people. Not too far from here, one of the first projects, St. Clair and Bathurst area, was a little neighborhood group that wanted to put in solar panels and power their neighborhood by the solar panels. So it's that kind of project that Live Green Toronto was designed to help, and very, very important because, as I said before, it's my view that people are ahead of their governments, and if the governments can show some leadership, they can accomplish great things. So this is another slide I put in because it's a great photograph. Well, speeches are entertainment as well. It's not all about academic topics like sustainability. But I love it because there's this really modern wind turbine behind one of the most historic pieces of Toronto, Prince's Gate, an exhibition place. And I also love it because it's symbolic of what we were trying to do there. And I also love it because I live in that neighborhood, and I've never had a complaint about this wind turbine. People actually love it. I've only ever had compliments, and that's not universally true with wind, as you know. And what we're trying to do at Exhibition Place, and what should be true by the end of this year, is make Exhibition Place a net zero consumer of electricity. What that means is as much electricity will be generated there as is used. And if it can happen on Exhibition Place, it can happen in any neighborhood in Toronto. It can happen in any industrial park. So there's the wind turbine, there's a solar installation. Incidentally, the second one, because of the Ontario government's feed-in tariff, is actually making the city a profit. There is also a tri-generation, which is a very efficient generator, and there's also geothermal ground source heat pump. Those things can be done anywhere in our climate, and it's a great combination of showing what we can do. As you probably know, this is something called deep lake water cooling. Most of the office buildings in downtown Toronto, their air conditioning now comes from using cold lake water instead of burning coal or natural gas or coming from an atomic energy plant. When we started this, it was extremely important because on really hot summer days, that's when the electricity use peaks. And the peaking plants in Ontario were coal-fired plants. So literally, we took the air conditioning off coal and into lake water. It's a great technology, and if we could find a way to use that in salt water, it will mean that Canadian technology can be exported around the world. So 2 final projects, and then I'll wrap up, and maybe the timekeeper can be a little lighter on me. But these projects, I think, bring together the themes that I'm trying to talk about of how we create a modern economy in a city in a way that lowers our environmental impact. The first is called Tower Renewal, the second is Transit City. And Tower Renewal was a project that started with an engineer at the University of Toronto who recognized that there was a great opportunity to lower greenhouse gas emissions in these apartment towers. Toronto has 1,000 of these. There's 2,000 in the Toronto region. They're all over Canada. They were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s through a program with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They're made out of concrete. And in fact, it's called concrete slab. You can probably see some stripes on the side of the front one if you look closely. That's the telltale sign of a concrete slab apartment building, those stripes. And concrete has 2 properties. One is it's permanent. So these buildings have a 100-year expected lifespan. Essentially, they're there forever. Got 1,000 of them. They're going to be here forever. The second is that concrete has no insulating power at all. So it takes more energy to heat and cool a 1-bedroom apartment in one of these buildings than it does to heat and cool a bungalow, which is counterintuitive. And the engineers at the University of Toronto said, if we clad them with insulation on the outside, it will significantly reduce their energy consumption, and it's not very expensive. It's about a 7-year payback. So that's a very real project. It's called Tower Renewal. There's an office at the city. There's 7 buildings under a pilot project. Fantastic in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This one project, if you do these 1,000 buildings, will meet the first Kyoto target in Toronto's case. Just this one project. But when it came to the city, we said, that's great. We like this environmental idea. But we know that these buildings are often in neighborhoods that are marked by poverty and that need economic renewal as well. So we worked with the construction trade unions to start a program to train young people who live in lower income neighborhoods in Toronto, where these buildings are often, but not exclusively located, to work on the buildings themselves. It takes about 30 people a year to do one of these energy retrofits on this building. These buildings. There's 1,000 of them. That's 30,000 jobs. A very significant job creator. And if you use it through a mayor's lens, at least my lens, you can use it to create those jobs for people who need them the most.